Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Cam?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? Pocket politics with Phil and Cam. Why? Why are we doing this?
I think it's gonna matter.
The only thing they want to talk about is guns and abortion.
My own views, I want to see the Republicans get away from the social issues.
I'm not saying that Republicans are idiots.
You hear something like that, it's powerful.
As an American, I was disgusted.
You could make the argument that you're probably more in the middle as well.
I think that's just a story that somebody's telling you.
Again, well, with the facts, this is true. Everybody knows
What
it.
facts?
So-
What facts? Who does this hurt more, Republicans or Democrats?
Boy, I've been thinking about that.
Welcome back to Pocket Politics. Cam, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. We've got an incredible episode coming for everybody out there. Today we have our first interview, a new politician running for congressional office in Tennessee. Cam, Antoine Bohannon running for Tennessee 5th, correct?
Tennessee 9th.
Tennessee 9th, thank you. And so he'll be on with us a little bit later today, but first we are going to go through the mass shooting at Michigan State University, the craziness in the train catastrophe in Palestine, Ohio. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've also got some Fox News regarding the defamation lawsuit that is going on there. And from there, we will move on to Nikki Haley's announcement that she is officially in for the Republican nomination for President 2024. We've also got another politician running for office officially in Colorado. And then some updates on the health and well-being of John Fetterman, senator from Pennsylvania, as well as some Jimmy Carter news. And we will wrap it up with developments in Ukraine. Cam, let's get started. What do you think?
All right, let's go, Phil. Tell us about that mass shooting.
Yeah, so Monday we had, a mass shooting at the campus of Michigan State University. There's a lot of details out there. First and foremost, our thoughts and prayers go out to all the people involved and their families. Certainly a tragic event. One of the interesting things to note was one of the students came out, and it turns out that one of the students who was, not injured, but certainly a part of this, was also in Sandy Hook when the Sandy Hook shooting happened. So pretty sad that, this is happening to some people multiple times in their life. But other than, hoping everybody is well, we will move on from that. The last thing I have is that they officially are returning to classes this week, so they are back in school. However you feel about that, some are saying it's too early, but either way, we'll move on to Palestine, Ohio. Cam, what is going on in this town in eastern Ohio?
Yeah, well, so you mentioned the town, East Palestine, Ohio, right? It's about 4,800 residents, and it sits right on the Ohio-Pennsylvania line, as you said, eastern Ohio. This railway derailment happened, it's been a couple of weeks ago now. And of course, residents in the area are concerned. During the derailment, there was like 141 railway cars, in this train. It sounds like 20 cars of that 141 were actually carrying hazmat of various types of hazardous materials. So the residents there are very concerned. The EPA is now telling them that the water is safe to drink, but, and here comes the but, we still want you to get it tested and keep an eye on it. So because that's what's being told to them, the residents there obviously are very skeptical. There are residents that are saying, hey, I've developed all kinds of, strange rashes I've never had before. We can still smell chemicals in the air, having trouble breathing, I'm coughing. You name it. I've actually heard some local, people from that area in interviews say that they've even been told that possibly their soil isn't good this year to even plant a garden in. So yeah, there's still, I think, a lot of questions and a lot of things that we don't know about this, this whole situation there.
One of the weird things is that the train derailment happened on the 3rd of February, and this last week is kind of the first week a lot of people are really hearing about this, which seems a little bit strange. It just went under the radar for some time, So they had these, there were 2 or 3 chemicals mainly that everybody was looking at. People are saying they're highly carcinogenic. They can cause all kinds of, breathing impairments, things like that. And, not only were these chemicals spilled into the land, but in order to kind of resolve the issue of these spilling, they went in and did a kind of a controlled burn and burnt them, which put a big plume of smoke in the air. It made a lot of news around the country, but it doesn't look good. But that's what we are reeling with, and luckily FEMA has just now gotten involved. You want to talk a little bit about their involvement, Cam?
Well, it's kind of been back and forth. I know initially there was, obviously requests going out for FEMA that the people need help, etc. Apparently, FEMA wasn't able to get involved at the beginning because FEMA is set up for natural disasters, and this wasn't a natural disaster. So FEMA was actually supporting other agencies that were actually able to go in and help with this. But I think they've got it now where FEMA is actually involved. I know Norfolk Southern is supposed to be footing the bill for all these residents that had to evacuate the town and go into local hotels. I haven't heard how that's going as far as the payments, etc. I think there's been some kind of hiccups there, which I can only imagine. I mean, there's a lot of residents, like we said, 4,800 or so that have to get out of the area. So, I'm sure there's some ongoing issues there.
Norfolk Southern's initial proposal was apathetic and heartless, and was offered just $1,000 to all the residents who were evacuated. They probably should be a little bit more responsible for that. But, the other thing that kind of goes into this is that, it wasn't until just earlier in the week that the Norfolk Southern CEO actually went to the site. We were 2 weeks in before he had even put eyes on what was actually going on there.
So like everything else in today's, day and age, it's gone political. Pete Buttigieg has taken a lot of heat for lack of regulations overall on the railroad. There's been that. There's been some people that have been attacking President Biden because he hasn't visited Ohio. My guess, and this is just my guess, knowing how these disasters usually work, is the president has probably been talking to the Ohio governor, Mike DeWine. And usually the way it works is for a president, whoever the president is they usually like to time their visit when it is appropriate. And so usually they coordinate that with the governor. I have not heard Governor DeWine come out and say, anything about the president visiting, but that would just be my guess is probably how they're kind of working that one. Mike DeWine, like I said, he has been, in the news quite a bit. Obviously it's happened in his state. He's the governor. I did hear him just recently say that the chemicals that spilled out of this into the Ohio River are no longer a threat. But I will also say Mike DeWine has taken some heat too, because some of the residents felt he wasn't, out in front of this as much as he should be. So, again, it probably depends on what side of the political aisle you sit on. There seems to be kind of finger pointing going back and forth. But ultimately, it comes down to, this area, these people that need help, getting help, and so that they can hopefully try and get their homes and their area back to normal after all of this.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is, something that we're national freight rail around the country. This is, on the backs of basically the government getting involved and breaking up a rail strike, where the employees were on strike for, various concerns, some of which include safety concerns. I don't think this is the government should certainly assist in this, but whether it's the governor of Ohio or the Secretary of Transportation or the President of the United States, this is really on the backs of the company itself, right? Like a private company screws this up, they need to be the ones that are held accountable, and It's no different than ExxonMobil drilling in, the Gulf of Mexico. These private companies have to be held accountable when they do stuff like this.
Yeah, well, and so again, we'll of course see how this plays out in the coming weeks, but it sounds like, obviously Norfolk Southern is involved. A lot of attention being put on this in and around the country. So we'll see again. Ultimately, what all of us want is for that area to be able to return to normal and the residents to be able to get back to their homes. But to do that, things have got to be safe there. So we'll continue to monitor cleanup efforts as they develop in the coming weeks. So with that being said, going from the railway disaster to Fox News and their Dominion voting system lawsuit that they're wrapped up in. Things are, certainly heating up with that. Phil, what do you got?
Well, so this kind of started on Thursday night after much of the news cycle was closed. We received basically all the legal paperwork that was filed out of the discovery phase of the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News, which is a defamation lawsuit. It doesn't really look that good for Fox News. Dominion came out, had a press conference that basically said, we are confident after the discovery phase that we have enough to win a $1.6 billion lawsuit against Fox News. And not only that, released in the discovery findings were a whole bunch of emails and text messages that just don't look good. It's clear the hosts knew they were lying. The people in upper management knew they were lying. And it's demonstrated. I mean, we got demonstrations of text messages and emails. At one point, Tucker Carlson said, what Trump's good at is destroying things. He's the undisputed world champion of that. He could easily destroy us if we play this wrong. Another conversation that he was having with Laura Ingraham, he said, it's unbelievably offensive to me. Our viewers are good people, and they believe it. And of course, he, is referring to the chaos that ensued when the former president, tried to claim that the election had been rigged or been stolen. And these lawyers, Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani came out with their crazy claims that, were coming from these email chains and these forums and all that other stuff. So it's not a good look that what some people consider news is just blatant lying to the public by people who knew they were lying. Rupert Murdoch, emails and messages back and forth to other people in the leadership talking about how they know Sidney Powell's a liar, and they know that there's no fraud involved with the election. What do you think? Does this make a difference in anything outside of the lawsuit itself?
No. I mean, it doesn't. If you are a Fox News listener, this isn't even going to phase you. Well, number one, if Fox is the only place you get your news, you're not even going to hear about this because Fox News isn't reporting it. And so I will tell you, they continue to be the number one ranked cable news network in the country. And last I checked, which was not that long ago, Tucker Carlson still had the number one, primetime cable news spot. Ratings number one, whatever in his spot. So no, I don't think this really matters. I think the real question going forward is going to be how the lawsuit plays out. I know Dominion voting, they feel confident. I will say this, Rupert Murdoch, I'm sure, has got himself some pretty powerful attorneys at his back too. Mr. Murdoch's got quite a bit of money himself. So yeah, I don't think this is going to make much of a difference in their actual, viewership or listenership.
But what does that say about the state of news and the media when one station is blatantly telling lies to the public? And keep in mind, this is one private news channel that is owned by not an American, telling blatant lies to the American people, and effectively getting away with it.
Well, I mean, we don't know if they are getting away with it because we'll have to see what the lawsuit plays out on this. Again, here's my take, right? If you're a journalist, you need to tell the truth. That's how journalism works. But again, Fox News is very popular, and some of these hosts, i.e. Tucker Carlson, and Laura Ingraham and some others are very, very popular themselves. So I don't see this doing much. I don't know what the time frame is on this. Well, I say not doing much. I mean, obviously it could do something if Fox ends up losing the lawsuit, but we'll have to see how that really plays out, because it's still, this all just kind of broke this past week, and we don't know what it's, where this is going to be. I don't even know when the trial officially starts. Do you?
It starts in April. I don't know the exact date, but I know the actual trial is going to start in April.
Yeah, so we're a couple months out here. I'm sure we'll hear more between now and then, but yeah, I mean, certainly news made there with Fox. We'll keep an eye on that. But there's also some political happenings this week, or this past week. I know I had talked a couple of weeks ago about Nikki Haley, that she was running for president. And so she actually made it official this past week when she formally announced it. She looks like she's trying to take a moderate lane, but yet she wouldn't denounce Trump. Many people said she had this kind of old-fashioned kind of style of a campaign announcement. She did come out and make a statement where she suggested cognitive tests for politicians over 75. That didn't set well with a number of elderly Americans. I heard, including some older politicians. But that seemed to kind of be what she was beating this drum on, Phil. Does her comments on elderly people help or hurt her? I mean, she's not, as we've said in the past, and I don't want to just keep beating this drum, but she's not polling very well. There may be a slight bump up in the polls now that she's formally announced. But, I mean, did she get off to a good start this week, or has she made elderly Americans and others upset? I don't know. What do you think?
No, she's not off to a good start. Not necessarily because of those comments specifically, but she's not off to a good start because she was never going to win this race anyway. Her statement when she came out and announced was pretty pathetic in general, right? She didn't have a lot to say. It was kind of ambiguous, amount to much. And when you said it was old school, that's exactly the thought I had. It reminded me of, Mitt Romney back in the day. Now, incidentally, she took some criticism from this, specifically from some somewhat popular news hosts who ended up getting themselves in a little bit of hot water due to the fact. What do you know about Don Lemon over there at CNN, Cam?
Yeah, well, Don Lemon, he's sitting there on paid leave right now after he came out and said Nikki Haley is past her prime. When he said that, he was referring to her announcement speech the other night. So Don Lemon is now sitting there on paid leave because of it. People are not certain if he's even going to come back to his show on CNN. Just for our listeners, if you're not aware, Don Lemon is one of the co-anchors of the CNN morning show. And so his coworkers now apparently are coming out saying he's got a huge ego and it's not good working with him. His coworkers being Poppy Harlow and Caitlin Collins. And so, there's a whole bunch of drama on this. We'll see if he comes back. I don't know. That's about what I know on this. Phil, do you got anything on Don Lemon with this, or anything on that? Or
no, I think it's silly. I mean, especially after we just talked about another cable news network where multiple hosts blatantly lied to the American people and put people like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani on primetime shows.
Yeah, I'll say this though. With Haley, I want to, again, see how she does in the coming weeks and months. But I said this a couple of weeks ago. I'll say it again. I think if nothing else, she is working to try and get herself a vice president nomination or vice president spot with whoever wins the nomination. But she could surprise us. We don't know. I've, seen a number of people have come out this week and said, hey, she is a tough politician. Let's not forget she took on the whole Confederate flag issue when she was governor of South Carolina. They had the Confederate flag on like the Capitol grounds and stuff, and she took that head on and had that flag removed. And so there was certainly some controversy there, but she didn't blink an eye. I think she's sharp when she needs to be. And so to be fair to former Governor Haley, we'll see how she does. But there was some other political news this week going on in Colorado where Adam Frisch announced that he is going to run again to challenge Lauren Boebert for Colorado's 3rd congressional district. For our listeners, remember Adam Frisch put up a very, very tough race against Boebert, and it was ultimately really close. Frisch lost it by only 546 votes last fall. Phil, what do you got on this?
Well, So one, I think he stands a really good chance. Secondly, I think this is more of an interesting topic when we look at it from the lens of looking at Lauren Boebert, right? It seems like she's been fairly quiet lately, other than going full Karen in the House Judiciary Committee's investigation at Twitter. But do you think she's gonna kind of amp it up, or do you think she's gonna kind of try and be a little bit more quiet with this competition coming so early in the game for her seat?
Tough call there. I don't see her changing what she is, because I think she feels that that is what has, made her popular. The more loud and bombastic she can be is what, has gotten her where she, feels good about herself and has gotten her elected, etc. But, there may be a piece of her that is a little bit worried. Actually, I think she should be worried. I mean, this guy, Frisch has jumped in this race fairly early. He's got now a year and a half to build a coalition against her. Like I said, this guy lost by just over 500 votes to her in what is a red district out there in Colorado. I think she's worried. No, to answer your question, Phil, I don't think she's going to change her demeanor or actions. I think she's going to continue to be the same Lauren Boebert, that we've come to know since she's been in Congress. But I will agree with you. I think she could very well lose this seat to Adam Frisch next year.
So, according to Cam, there are more racist elevator jokes to be told. We will see. Moving on, John Fetterman, Pennsylvania senator, checked himself into a hospital this week for clinical depression. He is going to do inpatient treatment for 2 to 3 weeks, most likely.
I mean, other than, he's still hospitalized right now. It sounds like he's been suffering bouts of depression ever since his stroke last year, but it's gotten worse in the last couple of weeks. He has had some health issues, obviously, since the stroke. We covered that certainly last year when we were talking about him in the race and such. But ultimately, folks, let's not forget, mental health is real, along with all the struggles that it presents. And so, I think anytime we get a public figure, whether it be a politician, an athlete, or whatever, or actor, actress, etc., anytime we can get someone who is out there in the spotlight, to go ahead and admit that they've got an issue with this, that while it's not good for the person, obviously, that has the issues, it is good that, A, they seek help, but then it's also good, B, in that the country sees that it is okay to go get help for something like this. There's certainly been bipartisan support for him, during this time, including Ted Cruz, who had a really nice tweet out on Twitter the other day about this, along with numerous other politicians wishing Senator Fetterman well. Phil, do you got any other comments on that?
Josh Shapiro, the governor, came out and said that there are no intentions to try and replace John Fetterman, as well as his staff came out. I think they said they expect it to be 2 to 3 weeks, and this is not the only time that politicians have gone for mental health treatment. We've had several cases over the past couple of years, and it's important to realize that this is just like any other medical care. Whether you fall off a ladder, you go get treatment. Anything else that would cause you to do that, mental health should be treated the same way, especially in the workplace and with our government officials.
Okay, yeah, no, and certainly, and so obviously we wish Senator Fetterman well with all this, and certainly hope he has a fast recovery. Speaking of some other health issues going on right now, it was announced here on Saturday that the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, he's entering hospice care after he's had multiple hospital visits over the last few months. And apparently he said enough is enough. He is at peace with himself, and he wants to spend his remaining days at home, at his home in Plains, Georgia, where he is now surrounded by family and friends. There's a lot we could certainly say about President Carter. We don't have a lot of time on that tonight, but I'll just say he was a Naval Academy graduate, a submarine officer. He's taken a lot of heat for his time as a president.
A goober farmer.
Yeah, he was a peanut farmer, but he's taken a lot of heat for I should say a lot of heat. He's certainly taken his share of heat over the years for his time as a president, but I think most people would certainly say that he's lived an incredibly full life, especially since he's left office. All the humanitarian efforts, his work with the Carter Center, et cetera. So, Phil, you got anything on President Carter?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to, and I don't remember if we talked about it when we were doing a special episode, but there was an article that was called "Hail to the Chief," and it was 50 great articles about every president, or not 50, but it was a great article about every single president. And I went this morning actually and read the article that was on there about Jimmy Carter. It was called "Jimmy Carter for Higher Office," I believe, and it was really good. Talked about kind of how he bucked the norm for post presidencies, and stayed involved, stayed active. And I thought that was a really good article. So I just put it out there so that if our listeners are interested, they can go read.
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, we certainly wish, prayers and thoughts are out there with President Carter as he's facing what, may be very well his final days or weeks.
Yeah, and before we move on to arguably the biggest story of the week, we do have a guest this week. We mentioned earlier, but Mr. Antoine Bohannon sat down and gave us an interview, and we will go to that interview now.
So, Antoine, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, yeah. Antoine Bohannon, 21 years in the Navy, retired chief, culinary specialist. Retired 26 months ago, came back to the Memphis area to kind of help out, do some community activism, and then ended up getting nominated to run for Congress. I couldn't have planned it better myself, so I can't complain at all.
Yeah, and prior to getting nominated, for your run this time, I believe you worked for someone who was running in the 2022 election. Did you not?
Yes, I did. His name is Mr. Brown Dudley. He was running for Congress in this area. He ended up losing out in the primary to a Miss Charlotte Bergman. And then 2 weeks later, Charlotte calls me up and asks me, "Hey, you did such a great job with Brown's campaign. Can you help me out?" So I came on board and helped out because I get a lot of veterans involved. I'm part of the VFW that's out here, the American Legion. I currently sit on the board of the Memphis Navy League. So just kind of rallying the troops. She came up a little short against Steve Cohen, and then she decided not to run. And so everyone was asking me, will I run since I have gained so much momentum? And then our chair asked me in December, he said, "Hey, we need you to run. You're a strong candidate. You always have those qualities. You're involved in the community. You're a veteran. People respect you. Would you run?" And I was like, as long as I get support from the party and for the people, I will definitely do that. And so I said yes.
Okay. Well, I got one more question here before I turn it over to Phil, but you mentioned being a veteran. So let me just ask you, how does it help you being a veteran and then, in turn running for a political office?
Being a veteran and running for political office shows credibility right off the bat. Leadership skills, especially being a chief in the Navy, because everyone has heard the phrase of "ask the chief," or they have seen movies. Tom Clancy, his saying that, officers may be able to do technical things, but you cannot get a ship underway without the chiefs. And so that persona plays big in the political realm because they know that we're servant leaders and we always put people in a position to succeed. So it's a huge plus.
Okay. Excellent. Phil, what do you got?
Yeah, so Antoine, I think my first question for you is can you give me like your top 2 or top 3 priorities that you're running on and that you want to accomplish, and then also how you plan to accomplish those priorities?
All right, so the top 2 things I'm doing is educational development and also economic development. Let's start with education. Education is the fine line between prosperity and poverty. We have too many kids that are not educated to be able to, one, thrive in America and then compete globally. So when you start looking at all the present jobs that we have, right, everything is leading toward commerce and technology. 2 areas that we're not really doing good in school because we're too busy trying to make everyone feel well but not training our kids to go out and succeed in life. So that's the education piece. Understanding what jobs are in demand and then having the funding to actually do that besides the normal funding the school has. Case in point. So the U.S. government has earmarked $93 billion for the Department of Education. That's 93 billion with a B. Not a single dime of that is going towards the summertime where kids need to be actively involved in different things like IT. So computer programming, design, video game designing, UAV designing, the things that the future is actually headed towards. Not a single dime is going towards that, which is ironic because those are the areas that we are failing in. When you think about math, when you're thinking about anything that deals with STEM, we are losing that battle. Second thing leads right into the education is actually the job demand, right? Right now, post-pandemic, you have to have a great education to be able to have one of those jobs where you don't get laid off. A lot of your manual jobs are now getting phased out due to automation. That's not a bad thing. It just means you need to retool yourself so you can be able to go into those type of fields where you can do a little bit of coding, right? And so with that being said, you have to have the industry certifications. And what are those? A+ certification, C++, Network Plus, Azure certifications, and Google certifications. All those software certifications are needed. And so those are the things that I'm actually running on. And when you take care of those two things, the crime will go down. Why? Because crime is a byproduct of poverty. But if everyone has those certifications or in a good job that pays over $55,000 to $65,000 a year, you have more vested in yourself and in your family. So that's what I plan on tackling as a congressman for my area.
Well, very well spoken. Thanks. I think, Cam and I are both big on public schools and how important they are to keep around and keep funded. We heard in the last year, you mentioned that kind of disparity in STEM learning in the school system. But in the last year, there's been two pretty major developments in that, both the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS and Science Act did put money into funding STEM learning in public schools at younger ages. Do you think those are in line with kind of supporting those goals that you have?
Yes and no. Yes, it does fall in line with that. But if you really start digging down into the bills, you will start seeing the potholes. I call them potholes, right? Because there are other funded projects just to get the votes for those bills. No one truly passes a bill through Congress strictly on its merits anymore. It's all about, hey, you got a bill, I got a bill, let's combine that bill. That's why they end up being 3,000 to 7,000 pages long. This is why it's hard to, because it takes 2/3 of Congress to pretty much get rid of a bill, right? But you can't necessarily do that even if it's a bad bill, because all the associated other items attached to it that are good and bad. This is why our national debt has ballooned up to $30 trillion. That is not sustainable. So what we need to do is we need to pass a bill to put a sunset clause for 48 months on all current bills. What that does, it forces the CBO to go through and other federal watchdogs to go through, look at all current bills that have funding attached to it and go do an ROI on them. What is the return on investment to the American people? You got 48 months. They can go through, look at it. If it's not, then you attach a sunset clause to that, and then that bill naturally goes away. Correction, the bill doesn't naturally go away. The funding for the bad parts of the bill goes away. Now you will start recouping trillions of dollars, and you can refunnel those into the areas that are needed, i.e. STEM, because the rest of the world is leading us in STEM operations and also pharmaceutical manufacturing.
Okay. My second question for you, Mr. Bohannon, is kind of regarding your district and the area. And so, in the wake of the Tyree Nichols killing in that district, what proposals or actions do you think are needed to reform policing, either in Memphis or in the country as a whole?
Well, what happened to Tyree Nichols is extremely bad, right? That shows that you always have bad apples everywhere. However, if you want police reform, you must first start with the police union. The police union pretty much puts together a package for the city council and the mayor to vote on not only what they can be charged with and what they can't be charged with, but also the conduct of the officers. And then also with the internal affairs associated with it, says how much participation that the lawyers for the teachers union will be in, not the teachers union, but the police union will be involved in. You don't have to go all the way to DC to do police reform, because what's good for Memphis may not be good for a small area in Arizona or Washington State or even someplace in Mississippi or Alabama. So we can't paint this whole thing with a broad brush. We have to be specific in what we want, and how to identify that is actually going through the police unions.
Okay. Awesome. And with that being said, I'll turn it back over to Cam.
Okay. Hey, Antoine, question for you.
All right.
So, you being an African-American man and a Republican, I know the Republican Party has struggled, for years now in attracting African-American voters. So what do you think the GOP can do to bring on more African-American voters and more minority voters in general?
One, do a better job at recruiting minorities, right? There are a lot of intelligent individuals, whether they go to college, go to the military, or they're in the CEOs of organizations, but actually getting to the point where you recruit them, just like anything else in life. So what happened with our party, we just got relaxed to the point that we thought, hey, we're physically responsible. We're about smaller government. We're all about rights. So naturally, you would think people are drawn towards that. But I've had plenty of conversations with our chairman and vice chairman that say, no, that's not what people need nowadays post-pandemic. People actually need a plan, not just a handout. So the left may have handouts, but they don't have a plan to transition you from poverty to prosperity. You have to have a balance. And so, yes, I get knocked from being an African American and a Republican, but then I also tell people what party actually helped out with the Underground Railroad. Yep, that was the Republican Party. Yep, what party pushed through the Civil Rights Bill that Martin Luther King won for us? That's right, the Republican Party. Why? Because Senator Robert Byrd, the longest serving senator during that time, put on one of the longest filibusters in congressional history to stop the Civil Rights Bill from being passed. Any Jim Crow law you go back to and you review, I guarantee you, if you research the aldermen, the councilmen, the mayor, the sheriff, the state representative, the state senators, and federal, they're all Democrats. I know, I researched them because I had to prepare myself for these particular types of arguments. And so at that point, you can't argue with data. And then I get hit, well, nowadays, the Republicans aren't doing anything. You're right. We must change that. But if you can forgive a party that puts you in bondage, right, that had the KKK, that had burning crosses, if you can forgive them, then you can forgive the Republican Party for being lackadaisical and showing compassion and showing that, hey, we care about you too, and here's what we have.
And so do you think going forward here in the next, coming couple of years, do you think the tide will change with minority voters?
Yes, the tide has already started to change, not just because I'm running, it's next year in 2024, but just the fact that people are now seeing that the interest rates are going up, inflation is going up, and that's due to overspending. Everybody who does home budgeting, pays bill, kind of sees the writing on the wall that everything that we currently have going on is not sustainable. So they're open. I tell people all the time, I'm not here to change your party. I'm here to ask you to have an open mind and maybe Just change your one vote. Give me a chance. You're in a win-win situation. Reason being, Steve Cohen happens to lose, he's still a millionaire. If I happen to win, guess what? I got to work twice as hard because you're going to see me again in another 12 months because that's how the founding fathers set up the House of Representatives race. It is determined every 24 months so you can go back to the people, understand what they need, and take that back to Congress and make legislation that helps them out. So I tell people all the time, you're in a win-win situation. And guess what? If I don't do what you say that I'm going to do, you don't have to vote for me in 12 months because you're going to see me again campaigning.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Give us the one big thing or biggest thing, I should say, that you have learned since you started running for office.
People don't know what they want. That is the biggest thing. I kid you not. Everybody say, well, he's such a good guy. Well, I say, well, secretaries can be good too, but if they don't know how to do any data entry or do proper filing, guess what? You still got to file. You got to fire them. You can't vote people on popularity contests. That's how we got into this predicament right now. The thing that I've learned is you got to present people with data. Opinions will have you going roundy all day, every day. You show them the crime is high, all-time high. The dropout rate is all-time high. Unemployment, no matter what they say nationally, locally is high. Unplanned pregnancies are high. High school dropout rates are high. So there is nothing good about the district. A leader has to be responsible for the people he is in charge of. You can't solve the nation's problems if you can't solve the local problems. Leadership 101.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned Steve Cohen, and he's been in that seat for a number of years now. And so with that being said, why should the voters in Tennessee's 9th district vote for you over Steve Cohen?
One, Stephen has been in the elected office for over 40 years, right? All the way up through state to federal now. And he just does not have the energy and the endurance to continue on doing it. You need somebody responsive to be there every single year, knock on doors, walk around. Post-pandemic, people want to see people now. We spend too much time on Teams and Zoom. He does not have the endurance to keep coming back every 12 months. And it's always good to have a good succession plan. You had to always understand who is next up to bat. In the Navy, they told us to train your relief. Politics does a horrible job of that. HR teaches you about having a succession plan. Politics does a horrible job of that. Steve Cohen is going to be okay. He's not going to go anywhere. He's still going to be there.
Yeah, well, yeah. So with that being said, I think that kind of wraps up our questioning here. Phil, did you have anything else for him before we say goodnight to Mr. Bohannon?
That's all I have, but I do want to say thank you so much for the time, and hopefully our listeners enjoy it. But we'll be glad if you're willing to come back again later on as we get closer to the race and to the election itself. We'd love to have you back.
Man, anything for you guys, man. Cameron has always been there for me every time I needed him. Matter of fact, my last duty station in Norfolk, it was good to have a friendly face in the same shipyard. Man, it did my heart good to happen to be walking and find out he was right across the way from us. And he's always been like a mentor, even in Hawaii. So, Hey, anytime you guys want me on, man, it'll be a pleasure. No problem at all.
Well, I appreciate the kind words so very much. And again, I'll echo what Phil said. Thank you so much tonight. We look forward to following you, as the months go on and all of that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, a rising star in the Republican Party, Mr. Antoine Bohannon, thank you so much.
Thank you guys very much. Have a good night.
Yeah,
we definitely thank Mr. Bohannon for sitting down with us.
Absolutely. That was great to do an interview. Our first interview we've done. We've got several more that we hope to do in the coming weeks. But yeah, I'm with you, Phil. Thank you so much to Mr. Bohannon. We definitely appreciate that. So why don't we move on here to some of the bigger news of the week that really kind of just broke today, Phil? What do you got on this Ukraine thing?
Yeah, so a surprise the United States president to Ukraine. He went to Kyiv to go meet with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and it was kind of we all woke up this morning and were shocked by this, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like much of his own staff was shocked that it was actually pulled off. That a president went into a war zone that isn't a war that we're fighting. So it's actually, obviously a very tough thing trying to get him in and out of there safely. I was told that Moscow, the Kremlin specifically, was told that the president was going to be there and requesting that they, cease fire at least while he's in there, since we don't have an actual war going on with Russia. It sounds like he's out of there now. From what I heard here about an hour or two ago, that he safely got out of there. We should learn more details about how the trip all went down and how he got in and out of there. But it was certainly kind of the dominant news here today. And we definitely wanted to make mention of that. This is not something you normally see. Like I said, sending a president into a war zone that is not a war we're even fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I was pretty shocked about the fact, diplomatically, I don't always understand what goes on there, and I don't think a lot of people do unless you're involved in that stuff. But, I was kind of intrigued by the news that we informed the Kremlin, but I guess I can understand the reasoning when you break down, maybe to not shoot missiles into Kyiv while the president's there. This is a really big statement, and I think it goes, there has been criticism out there for our support of Ukraine in this, but I think this kind of does a good job to seal our position, to let them know, we stand with European allies, and while not specifically a part of the giant union of countries in Europe, they are certainly close or on their way. It's also kind of a stand for fighting authoritarianism around the world. So it should be known. Now there's other diplomatic news that's surrounding this. Secretary of the State Anthony Blinken was talking this morning. I think at least I saw the clip this morning. I don't know when he actually talked about it, but that China could be considering giving war supplies to Russia, and he strongly warned against that. So there is all kinds of stuff revolving around this Ukraine thing. We are almost a year in at this point to this war. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, you say almost a year, and I think there was actually the 1 year anniversary was just a day or so ago, wasn't it?
I thought for some reason we hadn't quite hit it yet, but I don't remember the exact date. So
I mean, we'll see obviously with this war in Ukraine, but I mean, it doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon. Russia's dug in, Ukraine is dug in. I think the big one, as you mentioned, is China. And China, do they really want to get involved by supporting Russia right now? I'm not trying to answer that or suggest one way or the other, but I did hear Anthony Blinken talking about that this weekend with, is Russia, or are they ready to start giving Russia some support? There is some rumors that they are already possibly giving Russia some indirect support, not in weapons or troops or guns or anything like that, but possibly aiding them in some other ways. That is not, something that we know for fact, just a rumor that is out there. But certainly this is got the entire world watching it. And I'll say this, as we talk about Ukraine a year ago, when this whole thing kicked off, Vladimir Putin thought he was going to be in and out of there in a week or so. And here we are a year later. Russia has really kind of shown themselves to not be this powerful force that many in the world thought they were, militarily at least, as they sit here and still struggle on with this war a year later. And I heard a stat the other day. Now, I don't know how true this is, but there are rumors right now that Russia is losing like 1,000 soldiers a day as the fighting has gotten more and more intense. That is astonishing. I mean, that is a high number of casualties, 1,000 a day. Just to put that in perspective, we lost just over 58,000 Americans in Vietnam, and we were officially fighting on the ground in Vietnam for basically 8 years. Okay. If Russia were to keep this pace up of losing 1,000 soldiers a day, they would, at the end of the year, they would be, in the 60 some thousand dead. So, up to over 50 some thousand dead. So, I mean, it's just amazing how they're suffering those high casualties. But Vladimir Putin's shown in the past he's not worried about his soldiers' health and well-being, et cetera, or their safety. He's just got it in his head he wants to fight this war. So certainly more news to follow with Ukraine, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does, need to be said too that a lot of the soldiers that are over there fighting for Russia are conscripts too, which is kind of sad. But yeah, I mean, who knows when this thing's going to end? I have a feeling it's going to drag on, and we've probably got another year at least of this. But either way, Biden made the successful visit, and looks like relations are still good, and most of the other branches of government fully support this effort to keep Russia out of the sovereign Ukrainian country.
I think I saw an interesting thing this weekend, or an interview this weekend. I think it was Mike McCall, a Republican congressman from Texas, who just said, and I think it was Mr. McCall, he said there's yes, there are some loud people on the left and right that are suggesting we not support Ukraine, but he said there is still 400 or so people in the House of Representatives that are definitely behind it, both sides of the aisle. Just for our listeners, there's 432 representatives there. So clearly there's an overwhelming majority of people in the House of Representatives that support this thing, despite what the loud people may be garnering with their Twitter feeds, headlines, and all that other stuff. The House is behind them. The Senate's behind them. Other than that, Phil, I think we're about to wrap this thing up. Looks like we've had another show. I'm very happy we were able to get our first interview in and out of the way. I want to remind our listeners to like us and follow us on our social media, Facebook, Instagram. Get on there, like our posts, comment on them, etc. Also, find us on pocketpolitics.co. Get on our website. You can link up to all of our social media and our podcasts on there. And just so our listeners know, we would certainly love to hear from you, and we definitely do appreciate your support. So that being said, Phil, sounds like it's time for parting shots. My parting shot this week, I just want to mention National Geographic. They had a contest out here for Pictures of the Year winner. And so this is a pretty cool thing that National Geographic had. I put a link up to the story about this thing on our Facebook page here a few days back. So for our listeners that are out there, get on our Facebook page and check this out. I just want to say, way to go, National Geographic, because some of these photos that are out there are just stunning. I mean, one that shows on our Facebook page is just, of a man in the Mongolian countryside riding a horse with his raptor on his arm. So, a falcon, basically. He's practicing falconry while he's riding this horse. It's sprinting across the plains. He's got no hands on the horse at all. He's just balancing himself on it. And he's got this massive raptor, this big bird he's balancing out on his arm. And the background of it is amazing. That's a great photo. There's several other great ones on there. For our listeners, again, get on that Facebook page, find that link. I just want to say, great photos, great contest. Way to go, National Geographic. I liked it, and I'm sure many around the world have enjoyed those photos also. And again, for our listeners, check that out on our Facebook page. Phil, what do you got?
Yeah, so we did lose another celebrity this week. Richard Belzer passed. Cam, he had to be on TV for 20 years or something, right?
Yeah.
If not more than that. So hugely popular in a lot of people's households throughout the country, and our thoughts go out to his family. And so with that being said, that kind of wraps it up for this week. You got anything else to add, Cam?
No, I think it was a great show, and I'll just one more time say thank you so much to Mr. Bohannon, and we wish him the best of luck as he's out there running for congressional seat in Tennessee. All right, until next time.
Bye.